What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Francis Lee. And I gotta say, couldn't wait to get with you guys, the fans, and discuss our owners' comments, our managing partner, general manager Brian Cashman's comments. And had to do it through this forum because unfortunately, I'm not gonna be on the Knights of the Round Table that's coming on tonight. But you do not want to miss that because I know that is going to be absolute box office fireworks. I'm sure they're going to discuss these comments from Hal, the comments from Brian, and of course, a ton of other things heading into what should be one of the more interesting off seasons for the New York Yankees. So without further ado, I'm going to give you my take. I'm going to start with what Hal spoke about, how I saw Hal in that interview, even though it was Zoom and you really can't tell much from Zoom. I do feel like I got a little bit of something out of that. And then we'll get into I guess, for lack of a better term, the shit show that was the Brian Cashman interview. I mean, there's tons of stuff I want to get into that. So I'm going to start with Hal, and I'm going to start with something real simple that maybe I'm last to the party on this. Maybe I'm late. And you guys, you tell me in the comments or tweet me, tell me if you think I'm wrong. But I feel like Hal came off as super duper uber disconnected with the fan base, guys. Just disconnected. It doesn't seem like he's in tune with the pulse of what's happening with us, what we're feeling on a day-to-day. Now, many of you are hearing me say that and probably jumping immediately to his comments from last June when he said, I don't know what the fan base is mad about. I don't see why they would be so upset. I mean, that was infuriating enough. But to hear him today and to see that the tone was still that of an owner, of a team who maybe went to the playoffs and just didn't do as well as some people expected, that really threw me for a loop. I mean, he's sitting there. He's on Zoom. He's not in Arizona. And I'm not saying that every owner goes to the GM meetings because that's not true. Most owners do not go. But I mean, you would think that this would at least cross your mind, maybe if you spent the amount of money that Hal just spent on this team and your team didn't even make the playoffs. Your team actually finished fourth place in their division. You would think that he would want to take a bit of a heavier hand in things like the GM meetings. But alas, it was not to be. That speaks to me to a disconnect between Hal and us, the fans, but not just Hal and us, the fans. I think also between him and actual baseball operations. Now I'm going to shout my brother Pete out. He's on the other side producing this video for me, but Pete is somebody who you guys know, you guys who have been subscribed here forever. You guys, you know this. He's been saying this forever. It just doesn't seem or feel like Hal is really 100% tapped in to the day-to-day operations of the New York Yankees. And when you see an interview like the one that Hal Steinbrenner gave today or yesterday, when you guys are seeing this, it couldn't be clearer. I mean, he said verbatim that there was questions that he had to ask just to get a gauge on what is done on a day-to-day basis in the Bronx. And the way he said it was as if he's not even in the Bronx, which many of you know is probably the case. A lot of times he's flying from Florida or from somewhere else. I mean, he got the Judge deal done while he was in Italy, apparently. So I get it. He's a billionaire. Enjoy your money, travel, do your thing. But it doesn't even seem like he's even in the area code of what's going on with the team. And when he's asked certain questions about what is happening, actually, he has to defer people to the person who knows that, Brian Cashman. It's not ideal, especially when you're the guy who's foot a bill of billions of dollars. And I say billions, plural, because over the last decade, make no mistake about it, Hal Steinbrenner has spent billions in payroll for these teams that have won nothing. Yes, he's made tons of money and revenue and things like that, but he has put out a pretty penny and he's not getting very much return, at least from the performance side of things. So the first thing I want to start with, detail from his comments was Hal didn't even go to the offseason meetings. That was strike number one for me. Because if you remember, towards the end of the season, he made comments that led us to believe, right, whether it was true or not, it led us to believe that this offseason, these meetings were going to be a meeting of the minds between the brain trust of the New York Yankees. At least me, I thought that Brian Cashman, Hal Steinbrenner, Aaron Boone, Randy Levine, Michael Fishman, and whatever other powers they deemed fit were going to get together in a bunker somewhere and really take a look at what happened with the Yankees in 2023. That clearly was not the case, as Hal Steinbrenner revealed, that he wasn't even at these meetings. And the excuse that he gave us was ridiculous. He said, oh, I just didn't think, he said, we didn't think that I should be there in hopes that people could speak a little bit more freely without me being there. Hal, newsflash. I don't think anybody in the room is afraid to say anything, whether you're there or not there. Because at the end of the day, I think everybody else in the room realizes that you're not really the one who's calling the shots here. You might be signing the checks, but at this point, that's more of like an arbitrary thing just because you have to sign the checks. Because I have a feeling that if you could make it so that Brian Cashman was the one doing that, he'd probably be doing that too. So strike one against Hal. He wasn't even at the meetings. Then he also led us to believe that the audit that was going to be conducted on the 2023 Yankees was going to be a third-party audit. And the way that we understood it, right, many of us fans, was that a third-party organization was going to come in, look at the analytics department of the New York Yankees, look at the numbers, look at how the Yankees crunch the numbers, and then tell them, okay, this is where you're doing wrong. This is okay. This needs work. This could be a little bit better. Again, not to be. It came out a couple weeks ago that wasn't the case at all. What it actually is going to happen is they had a meeting with Zealous Analytics, and what is going to happen is they are going to see how that analytics firm goes about crunching numbers and data analysis, and then they will take that information and compare it to how they already do it in-house. So nobody's actually going to be coming in-house and watching and seeing how the sauce is made in the New York Yankees organization. They're just going to watch how somebody else makes their sauce and then compare it to their own recipe. That was not ideal when I first understood it, but I'll get a little bit later into why I think that might not be as bad as we think it is. But again, strike two, because you led us to believe something that wasn't actually what happened, Hal. Then there was a judge comments at the end of the season. Now, you guys have probably heard these ad nauseum at this point, but there was a lot of things that were really, really telling, really, really telling, because Judge spoke about looking at the right numbers, and I'm going to read it verbatim. He said, I think it's just looking at the right numbers. You get a lot of numbers, but I think maybe we might be looking at the wrong ones. We need to maybe value some other ones that some people might see as having no value. But when you're playing 162 games and you got to grind and play through things, I think there's certain things you can't put a number on. Listen. When Judge said this, I was wholeheartedly in agreement with him. Until this day, I'm in lockstep with Judge. I, for one, feel like the Yankees might be overemphasizing certain things like on-base percentage and launch angle and expected batting average, and maybe undervaluing things that, like batting average or strikeout percentage. You know what I mean? Just because somebody hits a ball extremely hard and the hard hit rate on their fan graphs looks amazing doesn't necessarily make them a great player. Okay. But the last couple of seasons, it feels like the Yankees have prioritized getting guys with high expected batting averages and, pitchers who have good fielding independent pitching numbers, right? An xERA, which is expected earned run average, things that are expected, but didn't actually happen. And a huge emphasis seems to have been put on these numbers. So when Judge says, maybe we're looking at the wrong things, of course I'm going to be in agreement. And many fans were. But it seems like some people didn't take too kindly to those comments. And I think we saw a little bit of that spill over when Cashman got in front of the media today. But I'm going to stick on Hal, because the reason I brought those comments up was to talk a little bit about the firm who is going to be doing this Yankee audit. What was revealed today through Hal's media availability with, I guess, Jack Curry and a couple of other people, was that Zealous has already met with the Yankees and will continue to meet with the Yankees throughout the offseason. They will have a couple of talks. But the brunt of the work that Zealous is going to be able to do with the Yankees is actually going to happen throughout the season. And what is going to happen is throughout the season, they are going to compile data based on the Yankees games, based on the Yankees player performances. And the Yankees are going to continue business as normal in their analytics department. What's going to happen is the Yankees are going to have access to how Zealous views the data that the Yankees put out this season. And they're going to have access to how Zealous crunches those numbers and analyzes that data and what they would do moving forward. They will then be able to take that data from Zealous and compare it with what they're doing in-house. When they have that, they'll be able to make a decision on, okay, should we keep this guy? Should we not keep this guy? Because Over here at Zealous, we have an all-star of analysts, right? So, I mean, there was an article. It was in The Athletic, I want to say, about a week ago, and I forgot this guy's name, but I'll probably retweet it so you guys can pull it up. The article, the guy was saying that basically when you look at Zealous and you look at, their staff directory, it looks like a dream team of analysts. Everybody has scientists in their name. Now, when I see things like that, obviously I get nervous because scientists in baseball, it's crazy how far we've come in 2023. But for those people who do get a hard on every time they hear the word analytics, they would probably look at the staff directory at Zealous and be super excited, because that's the kind of people that they have there. Zealous was founded by former Dodgers CEO Doug Fearing and their director of research, Dan Cervoni. These guys were in the Dodgers organization for a long time, and the research and development department of the Dodgers organization still operates and runs for the most part based off of foundations that these two gentlemen put in. So you can credit not all of the success, but a large part of the success in terms of analytics that the Dodgers run to these two gentlemen. These two gentlemen have now branched off and they formed Zenith Analytics, along with their senior data analyst who actually has Yankee roots. Their senior data analyst name is Andrew Hopin. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Yeah, I got it spelled here, but I didn't put the phonetics, but it doesn't matter, right? He won't care. This guy is the senior data analyst over at Zealous. He worked with the Yankees as an intern in 2015, and then in 2016, he took an associate position with the Dodgers. And then that's how he met Fearing and Cervoni, and then ultimately joined them in the company that's now going to be conducting the audit for the Yankees. He's their senior data analyst, and he's going to be the one kind of, taking the information, putting it together, and then giving it to, to Brian Cashman and them for them to do whatever they're going to do with it. He's an interesting character, though, because he's been around the league. He's seen it different ways. He's seen how the Yankees do things. He's seen how the Dodgers do things. He's worked with teams like the Giants. He's worked with teams like the Dodgers, even, after, stopping working for them. So he's an interesting guy to have looking at it. But what really interests me about Zealous Analytics is that they have done this process before. Maybe some of you knew this, but this was news to me. The current process that the Yankees are going to go through in 2024 has actually been done by 4 teams in Major League Baseball prior to the Yankees undertaking it this season. The Rays have done it. The Braves has done it. And again, the Giants and the Dodgers have done it. There are also more teams, but the article didn't name them. Now, out of the 4 teams that I just named, the ones that excite me the most are the Rays and the Braves. Why? The Rays might not have won a World Series yet, but the one thing that we know as Yankee fans is year in and year out, they just find a way to be competitive and in the mix at the end of the year, right? The Braves have actually won a World Series recently, and I mean, barring that catastrophic choke job this postseason, looked like they were well on their way to being in the mix again this postseason. The Rays have done a lot of things well, especially in terms of player development and analytics. So when I hear that 2 teams like the Rays and the Braves have undergone this process in the past to make their analytics work better for them, it's very exciting for me as a fan. And when I put that next to the mission that Zealous says that they have, it also excites me. Here is that mission. They say, we fundamentally help teams use their data to win more games. That involves projecting and improving player and team performances. And that's through using all of the complex proprietary data sources that teams have access to build models that contextualize historical performance, that project future performance, and that help with both strategic decision-making around player acquisition, which has been a sore spot for the Yankees, right? See Joey Gallo, Josh Donaldson, etc. And then even getting into tactical and in-game decision making, like who's the best matchup. That last part doesn't excite me as much because I like those decisions to be taken by the man in the dugout, the manager. But if the Yankees are going to let themselves be managed by somebody who looks at a calculator before he calls the bullpen, then I guess these are the guys you got to go to do it. Now, I think that this could be a good thing. I think that it could work out to the Yankees' favor. And I say that because clearly our analytics up to this point, they're just not. It's not working. All right. We don't like what we've been seeing. We don't like the offense. We've seen it. The offense is anemic. They struggle at run production. It's just not very good. They don't move runners. They're not fast. They don't seem athletic enough. They're too right-handed. I mean, we can go on and on about the things that seem to be wrong with this team and how a lot of it points to our analytics being bad. So going to an organization that is touted by many pundits as the dream team of analysts seems like the right move. The interesting thing is that the move was called by our head of analytics and Michael Fishman, who is also an assistant general manager. And that move could have been called because his boy is the senior data analyst over there. So does that mean that we're going to get the best representation, from them? Or is it going to be, that's my guy in Fishman, so I don't want to make him look too bad? Time will tell, guys, but it is something to look out for. Another thing to look out for is that Zealous Analytics received $3.6 million in funding from a company called Redbird. Now, Redbird probably doesn't ring any bells for most fans or, most of us who are just strictly Yankees, but Redbird is actually a partner of the New York Yankees because they're the partner that Hal Steinbrenner went into business with to buy AC Milan in 2022. This might not mean much to you, but me, who's really into finance and the business aspect of a lot of this stuff, $3.6 million is a lot of money. And the fact that it came from Hal Steinbrenner's friends doesn't seem like it would hurt things. So if it's me, I'm looking at it like, hey, who knows? Maybe Hal secured that investment as good favor from these analytics guys to be able to give him information that his team can actually use to be better. Maybe that was a show of good faith. I don't know. Hopefully it is. Like I said before, time is going to tell. But what I want to sum up with that is this process is not going to come to any, conclusions here this year, right? In this offseason, because those meetings and that audit that we thought was going to happen isn't going to happen. And me as a fan, I kind of feel lied to by Hal Steinbrenner. But the more I listened to him today, the more I realized that it might not necessarily be that he's just lying to us. The guy just doesn't know what the hell's going on with his team. He doesn't get it. He doesn't realize what's happening day to day. He's not in the stadium. He's not watching, through those excruciating at-bats or those really long bad outings for some of our starters. So, of course, this is a guy who's going to stand in front of the media in June and say he doesn't realize why fans are so upset. He doesn't see what the hell's going on. He doesn't know what there is to be upset about. So, yeah, I kind of felt a little bit defrauded, but the more I listened, I realized the guy can't defraud me because he doesn't know enough to fraud me. And that's sad in and of itself. Moving on. 2023 was interesting to me, not just because of how bad we were and how much of a failure it was, but because when Brian Sabean and Omar Minaya came in, I don't know about you guys, but me as a fan, I felt like this was going to be, good for us. I thought we were going to see moves that kind of resembled a more traditional outlook. What I gathered from Hal Steinbrenner's comments today was that 2023 wasn't really an action year for Sabean or Minaya. 2023 was more of a research year for both gentlemen. And what we're going to be able to see from them, we would never have seen in 2023. So hopefully now, moving in 2024, we will see a little bit of a change. We will see some differences that seem a little bit more baseball guy-ish because of Brian Sabean and Omar Minaya. Because apparently in 2023, they were more on a watch and see role to see how things were being done. And now they will be in a more actionable role. Again, this is what I gather, and listening to Hal Steinbrenner, it's not easy to gather the truth. But I digress. When we go to Cashman, things change a little bit. Oh, the last thing with how I want to say is with Aaron Judge. He spoke about Judge in a very weird way, right? And I'm not going to, point to anything funny about it or make it sound any silly or anything. But to me, it just felt weird to hear an owner speak about a player, but as if they were on equal footing. Now, I'm not trying to say that he should speak about the player like they're slaves or something like that, because that's not me, guys. It is what it is. But it just felt weird to hear how consistently speak about Judge as a contemporary. He spoke about Judge like somebody who he viewed almost on the same level as he views Brian Cashman and Randy Levine and guys like that. I mean, he said me and Judge several times, like me and Judge and I, as if they were having powwows the same way that him and Cashman do. I don't know about you guys. Maybe you've seen it in the past, but in baseball, that's completely unfamiliar to me. And it also seems really interesting coming on the back of us knowing that last season, the Judge deal doesn't get done if Hal didn't step in himself and get it done. So how do you guys think Brian Cashman feels about that? Do you think that's a comfortable thing for him to deal with as a GM? Do you think he's cool with realizing that there's a player who's on the field that probably has just as much say in certain things as he does? I can imagine that that's probably not the most comfortable position for Brian. But then again, he might have put himself in that position because, as I was about to get into, Cashman's sentiments were pretty much similar to Hal, but his tone was completely different. And if you guys were in Pete's Live, then you already know what I'm talking about. And if you weren't, thank God it's up there for you to go back and check out, because this is must-see TV. I promise you guys, you're not going to be sorry. You cannot miss that live. You just can't. You have to see it. This is probably the most disheveled, not put together version of Brian Cashman that I've ever seen. And I'm not saying that he looked like Randy Levine when, he had his glasses and his hair all over the place. No, but his tone and his composure was completely off. This is not the calm, cool, collected Brian that we've seen at every single deadline the last couple of years when they don't do much and he's just like, yeah, well, we didn't like what was out there. No, this Brian Cashman was on fire, right? And not in a good way. It was fire, like he was angry and he was pissed off that he had to be there taking these questions from people it seemed like he viewed as peons, if we're being honest. But like I said, he felt a little bit, well, no, not a little bit. He felt a lot like Hal did, in that this season wasn't a failure. It wasn't a failure. The Yankees aren't doing anything wrong. The Yankees aren't in a bad place. I mean, at one point, he literally said that there was nothing different about the current offseason that the Yankees find themselves in than any of the ones past. I got news for you, Brian. I don't know if it could be any more different. I mean, you're talking about a team that missed the playoffs completely. I mean, you're not talking about a team that, played to the final game of the season and, just, 1 or 2 games go a different way. No. Missed the playoffs completely. Okay. I mean, we were out of contention for a little while there. We played meaningless baseball for the first time in a very long time. You finished 4th in the division. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4th in the division. And that's because the Red Sox decided to suck hella ass down the stretch, because even they were ahead of us for a large part of this season. You almost finished last in your division, and yet you go into the offseason and say it's no different. I mean, tone deaf? That's what I use to describe Hal. But when it comes to Brian, it can't just be tone deaf, because we know that Brian is there. We know that Brian is at the games. I mean, nobody knows it the way NYYU knows it, because we were at a game. We were at the Fire Cashman game. We saw how security was deployed to certain sections to stop chants and signs and all that shit from going on. We saw it firsthand. So we know that Brian is there and aware. So he can't be tone deaf. It's more pride, hubris, arrogance. A lot of the things that my brother Pete was echoing on yesterday's live, I'm echoing here, and I'm sure the rest of our team is going to echo in tonight's roundtable. This guy is too proud for his own good, and that's what came through in his comments. I mean, think about it. He also felt that bringing in Zealous is going to be like a good thing for the Yankees, right? I'm sure Cashman also feels like the 2, new coaches will also be big changes for the Yankees. But that much didn't really come through his sentiment, especially when you're saying that this offseason is not going to be very different from anything. I mean, bringing up that the Yankees have the smallest analytics department and yet the largest pro scouting departments, as if that's a good thing. It doesn't seem that way, Brian. That's why people ask you the questions that they do. That's why fans get as upset as we do. It doesn't seem that way, Brian. It doesn't. And just because you say it, we don't even know what his barometers are to measure the size of these departments. I mean, how does he know that they have the smallest analytics department? Is he running around with a tape measure every time we're on a road trip? I don't know that I have to believe that to be true because Brian Cashman said it. I'm not saying you have to believe me, but I'm saying you don't have to believe Cashman either just because he said it. How do we know that they have the smallest? We don't know that. Just because he's saying that. Does he mean the smallest amount of employees? Does he mean the smallest physical office? Because it just doesn't seem that any of that can be true. And it's also not the flex that he thinks it is. I'm sorry. But when you say that we have the largest pro scouting department in baseball, it begs the question. Was it a pro scout who said that we should have went to J-Happ in the 2nd inning of Game 2 back in 2020? Because if it was, I'd love to get his name. I'd love to pick his brain. Is it a pro scout that told you that Joey Gallo was going to work in New York? Because I have it on pretty good authority that most scouts would have told you this guy's probably not going to work out in the big city. Was it a pro scout that continues to tell you that Aaron Judge should bat 2nd in that Yankee lineup? Because again, I'd love to get that guy's name. interesting shit that I'd like to ask that guy. Is it a pro scout that went to you and told you you have to trade for Josh Donaldson? He's the edge that you're missing. He's the third baseman that you need. He's going to be 10 times what Gio is. Was that a pro scout? Because again, if it is, then maybe we don't just need to have an analytics team coming on at us. Maybe you need to throw out the whole batch of scouts that you got there because something isn't working. All right. The last thing that really plagues me when you bring up the thing about small analytics department, but big pro scouting, is it was that same department that years ago prompted you to walk away from a guy like Nathan Eovaldi, right? Prompted you just last season to say that, you know, Monty is cool, but he's not a guy that's going to crack our postseason rotation. Those are two guys who in a couple months are going to be brandishing brand spanking new World Series rings from the Texas Rangers. Now, I'm not going to do the whole spilled milk thing and we should have had this guy and signed that guy and traded for this one and kept that one, because I'm sure we've got a lot of time to do that moving forward. But I'm going to bring it up here because when you bring up having that much pro scouting, but making those kind of moves, it just doesn't add up, Brian. And that's why you don't get to sit there and talk to Joel Sherman the way you did, who, by the way, gets my ultimate respect. I tweeted it out yesterday. The guy is the voice of the people at this point. He's the only one who sat in the room, in the Zoom room with Hal and then in person with Brian and seemed to ask real questions that fans wanted answers for. Now, he didn't get those answers because, of course, they don't feel like they have to answer to him or us for that matter. But at least he tried, and shouts out to him for at least doing that. When I saw Cashman today, it was obvious that he was put off. And maybe it was what I mentioned before, the fire Cashman day. Clearly, he didn't like that. Or we know that he didn't like Judge's comments from the end of the season. That's another thing that was very obvious. And we also know that he's not a fan of the If George Were Alive club. And that much came very clear today. That came through clearly when he seemed to take shots at George, the late George Steinbrenner, I should mention, and also his star player, MVP, and captain Aaron Judge. These are things that I did not have on my bingo card for the Brian Cashman interview. But again, things that happened. He also decided to hang on the rim about how playoff teams went after the players that he made moves for. He hung on the rim about it like this is a trophy thing for him. When in reality, what sense does it make? I mean, it doesn't make it better that you traded for Joey Gallo because Joey Gallo went to two playoff teams after. I mean, the Dodgers took a chance on him and so did Minnesota. That doesn't mean that we should have done so. All right. You can't say it's like, you sleep with a girl. You say, well, yeah, of course I slept with her and she's ugly or whatever. But I mean, obviously other people have slept with her. What is that? How does that matter? How does it matter? I mean, it's like, what did you think was going to happen to active baseball players? Did you think you were going to cut like ties with them and they were just going to like go into the abyss, never to be heard from or seen again? You think that it redeems you somehow that two other teams decided to take chances on these guys? Because I got news for you, Brian. It doesn't. It doesn't. Because the Yankee fan is not asking you to make the same moves as Minnesota or Los Angeles. They're asking you to make winning moves for the New York Yankees. And hence, we don't give a flying fook about what the Dodgers do with Joey Gallo after we cut bait with him. I'm sorry if you don't get it, Brian. I mean, for me, the bottom line is when it comes to Odor, when it comes to Sonny Gray, when it comes to Joey Gallo, when it comes to Josh Donaldson, all these guys failed here in New York. They didn't work. I don't care where they went after they were here. That's not some kind of badge for you to put on your shirt, Brian. Just because another team decided to take a chance on them after they went down in flames here in New York, it's not the flex you think it is, bro. It's not. These are just guys who were picked up to fill out rosters. And yeah, it just so happened to be by playoff teams who probably wanted to have depth in case of injury, because that's what winning organizations do. That's the type of shit you should learn from. Not picking up from our scraps, of course, but preparing yourself for playoff runs, which is how most of these players got picked up. And in the case of Sonny Gray, it didn't work out for him in New York, but Sonny's a phenomenal pitcher, and I wish him nothing but the best, so I hope that doesn't come off as a shot to him, because I kind of liked Pickles. Moving on. Cashman, to me, and I'm going to finish here. Cashman, to me, seems like the politician who runs unopposed in every election. Okay, us as fans, we've been begging for change. We've been dying for change, right? Clamoring for it. But at the end of the day, so long as the man runs unopposed, why does he have to change anything? What's the incentive? He is the czar. He's the leader. This is a freaking dictatorship, and it's run by Adolf Hitler and Brian Cashman. He doesn't have to make anything different for the fan because he knows more than us in his mind, okay? When Michael Kay made that statement earlier this season about Peter Rosenberg sounding like a fan, I was really taken aback by it. But after I listened to Cashman today, I mean, what he did today was way worse than that, because he just doubled down on everything that has been wrong with this organization for the last 14, 15 years at this point. But again, it doesn't matter because it's not a democracy, okay? And our vote doesn't really matter. Shut up and eat your chicken buckets. I couldn't have said it any better than my bro Pete did earlier. That's all that matters. Shut up and give me your money. He's going to do the moves that he wants. He's going to get the players that he wants, and he's going to pass on the ones that he wants too. At the end of the day, for him, I think it's about maybe winning a GM of the Year award. He wants to win that Executive of the Year award, and he knows that that's going to be hard to do if he just signs the biggest and best guys out there, because then people are going to blame the success on the great players that he brought in and not the fact that he was the one bringing them in. So you got to do it with the replacements. You got to do it with the makeshift team. You got to do it with the redemption projects if you as the GM are going to be the one to get the accolades. I get that, Brian, but the only problem is that the New York Yankees are the wrong team to do that on. You see, this logo means something completely different. We're not in it for Executive of the Year awards. We're not in it for MVPs. We're not in it for Cy Youngs. We're in it for World Series. We're in it for trophies, not the personal ones. We're in it for the ones that George practically gave his life for. And until you get that, we're not getting another one. It's that simple. Cashman is like Caesar in the Bronx. Caesar came to power in Rome when they needed somebody to defend them against the intruders. They put somebody out there to defend them. But the problem was he liked the power, and so he stood there. Well, that's what's happening with Cashman. Hal put him out there. He likes the power, and so he's staying there. And I don't think there's anything that Hal or anybody for that matter can do about it. I mean, the guy literally said today, verbatim, my facts, okay? Our facts, real world facts, none of that shit matters. We now live in the world of Cashman facts. Hashtag my facts. Those are the only ones that matter. Put it like this, guys. If you buy the best ingredients in the world and you put them together to make what you have to make, your soup or your salsa, whatever it is, your sauce, right? Because I had an amazing pasta today that my wife made. If you buy the good ingredients, it's going to taste amazing, right? It's about how you cook it too, but the ingredients are the most important thing. The issue with the Yankees is that the last couple of years, we've been getting our ingredients at the dollar store and hoping that we still find a way to come out with Carbone level sauce. It's not going to happen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy, Francis Lee. I thank you for listening to me. I know I'm a little long-winded, but you guys love it. Make sure that you are back on the NYYU channel tonight at 9 p.m. sharp, because Pete and the rest of the gang are going to be giving you guys one of your fan favorite nights at the round table to discuss the comments that I just discussed and everything off season. So please do not miss it. And remember, like, subscribe, share. Mission 20K is alive and well. I'll see you guys soon.
Can't make a promise, but I do my best. 25 sitting on 25 racks. Just got started, no, we ain't done yet. Bought a new crib, that's a goddamn flex. Sign that check. Told them last year that I been up next. Can't take calls, but I send that text. From way downtown, but the shit's still wet.